Hey, everyone. Welcome to the VO Boss Podcast and the Boss Superpower Series. I'm your host, Ann Ganguzza, and I'm here with my lovely, lovely co-host, Ms. Lau Lapides.
Oh, it's so great to be back. I'm so
Yay.
excited for today.
Hi, Lau.
Hi.
And we have a special guest with us, kind of a last-minute voice actor, on-camera actor, coach, Carol Alpert. And Carol, may I say, I am so happy to see you. As a matter of fact, you were like early and like, bam, you were here on Riverside. And that means that you were able to follow directions really great.
Ooh, she didn't take a left turn at Albuquerque. Look at that.
Can I tell you how many people like... I give instructions here. This is what you need to do in order to join this, or here's what you need to do when you're naming your files for, homework. Here's what you need to do when I'm casting and you need to do this. Here are the instructions. And I cannot tell you, I even create tutorials. It's like out of control, like video tutorials. And yet still there are people.
That's like one of the number one problems, though. I mean, seriously, as an agent, I see this day and night. They're not reading directions.
I think we need to talk about that because we say it all the time, but honestly, gosh, if we could just have all of us saying it yet again, like maybe 100 times over, and yet good examples, concrete examples of why it is so important to just follow directions. And that is like almost first in line for, getting thrown out the window. If you can't follow directions in a casting, with a casting agent or a talent agent, and you can't name your file correct, I mean, that's one of the first reasons that you get tossed to the side.
And we just had that literally the other day. We had a big casting come through.
That. Yeah.
And the age range was 35 to 45. And guess what? They made our jobs easy because 70% of those auditions were under the age of 30, or they sounded like they were, or over the age of 60, or they sounded like they were. And it was very easy to ditch those.
But Law, what about the people who say, well, if I don't audition, I'll never know. And maybe I wouldn't have gotten the audition if maybe my agent didn't seem to think I, was qualified. Talk on that, because that is something I know that talent will say, well, they're always telling me the agent wouldn't send you an audition if they didn't think you were qualified.
Rightly so. And I get that point, and it totally makes sense. But it's just not always true. Like, that's the difference between theory and reality. Yes, sometimes we're going to send it out, right? Sometimes we're going to send it out to the top 30 or 40 people, which in a roster of 500 or 1,000 people is very small. But other times we're going to filter it within, say, a non-union female group that we think that this is going to really fit most of their stats. So we can't take the time every audition to handpick.
I was just going to say, isn't like the main criteria here time? I mean, you're busy casting agent, busy, and so when it comes to, getting out that audition, I'd rather you got it out to me than didn't. And so if you had to send it to like a larger group of people that, like you said, in reality, maybe not everybody is, completely qualified at that point, but to get the audition out so that people have a chance, I think I would much rather have it that way. And then, look, we're not... I would hope as voice actors, like, we can read the specs, we understand, like, if we don't sound 35 to 50 or and we're not male or female, you know what I mean, like, we should just be able to read that and understand
one would think
I don't fit the specs, so perhaps I shouldn't. And now let me ask you a question, Law. And Carol, because I know you've had experience as well in casting, does that like kind of just, if somebody throws it at you, do you kind of be like, oh God, they should have known better? And then does that kind of influence maybe your future thoughts on when people submit auditions?
I'll answer this and then I'll ping it over to Carol. Maybe in the moment I get slightly annoyed, but then I let it go. Because I feel like in the moment I'll go through with my assistants and I'll say, no, too old, desperate, didn't read, da-da-da. It's very deductive. It's very quick. There's no emotion in it. It's like da-da-da-da. But I would never hold it against a talent for sending it an audition that they're absolutely not in the running for. Because I feel like sometimes, they think they really could get it, or they really do sound a certain way, or they really want to have that practice on auditions. So I don't mind it as much as another agent may mind it. And also, a lot of times, talent doesn't realize this. A client client will differentiate
Oh,
the
yeah.
audition where they want a handful of your best talent, and typically it's like, we want it by noon today.
Well,
Right?
yeah,
Those
right?
are otherwise they don't. Most of them don't. They just say, here's the specs, send it out, and then we send it out to all of our people
Well,
because
that's why they
we,
work with you.
well, we
Because
also want them to be up for a job. If we're constantly just submitting 12 people,
yeah.
so many people are going to miss out on even just the running. Carol, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I do think, and I know that I've experienced too, when you're talking even about the 30 range, though, too, that's a lot of the millennial, and I think there's a specific, not language, but like a lilt in the voice and stuff, and you hear that all the time.
Style, I think.
A style, yeah. It's like a little bit at the end, it goes up, and, I know myself, if it was really like 30s, I'm not going to do it because that's very specific for me.
I can't do 30s.
Right,
Even though I have a younger
exactly.
sounding voice, I just can't.
Correct. And I think, and then it's the same thing for, that's why this is such an ageless but age type of profession, because they know what they want it to sound like, but that doesn't mean that you're that age, of course. So it's almost like when you get, older, over 60, gravitas, life experience, well, that could be any line. I've heard people in the age of 70 that have high voices as well. I do, if it's not as specific as only the 30s, I will go for that because I think, we can also see where it's coming from. And also there are energy. A lot of it is the energy. Do you have the energy for that age? If you're maybe early 40s, but you're very kind of, slow talk or whatever, that's not the energy.
Yeah.
So
right.
yeah,
Style.
I agree. But,
what about in addition to just let's say age for your cast? I mean, there's so many different parts to the casting specs. I mean, there's age, there's gender, there's ethnicity, and then there's also file naming.
Yes.
I just happened to throw that in there because I happen to know that's a pet peeve of many casting agents and directors. And let's just talk a little bit about that because why, Law, is that so important?
Well,
I think your file correctly.
Well, I think the formatting of things is super important because when you're moving fast, the more structure you have involved, the quicker it is for your brain to pick it up. So if everything visually looks the same, it's very easy for us to pick it up, whether you have a slate in there, you don't have a slate in there. Don't assume that on our end we're doing anything in particular. We may be doing something totally different. Like we may not want a slate because we may be doing a zip file and we're labeling it and we don't need your name. You know what I mean?
Well, that's a slate. I was talking about the file name.
Yeah, well, file name. And you know what's interesting about the file name? I mean, it's fun for me to talk about it, but it's not fun for our partner, Tim. Tim is the owner of Model Club Inc., where MCVO is housed, and he's a friend and a colleague and just a wonderful person. He will actually, I shouldn't say this because then the audience will be like, good, but he will actually take the time to completely redo the files for talent who don't send them in properly. Like if they're inverted, which oftentimes they'll be inverted, he will fix them because he's a great person. He's a guy who wants to book the job, get people working, and make Model Club look good. He's not going to chase after 50 people who did it incorrectly.
Well, it probably takes more time to do that.
Yeah, but he'll expect us to do that. Like he'll say, you guys just let people know. Don't forget to let people know, like to try to label properly, because then I have to go through, meaning his staff has to go through. And fix it. And that's another thing too, Annie, that people don't realize and how important it is to read the specs and follow them is you have a whole lineup of people that are working almost like an assembly line in a factory. You have a whole lineup of people working in different offices to make that job go. A lot of times I think talent think, oh, I have an agent and the agent books me and then there's a client and it's done. There's a whole slew of people. My team, Tim's team, the client's team, the studio team, the production team. I could go on and on. Sometimes there's 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 people involved in execution and decision-making of that one gig. And literally, because we don't see it and we don't hear the tree falling in the forest, we don't think it's there. I think it's important to be intuitive about that I'm not just reading the directions, I'm reading in between the lines to understand how much it takes to make that one gig go.
There are a lot of in between. I had always been told too, yeah, that they can set up whatever file system that they do to gather. I've been on a lot of, and assistants have been telling me that too, that if it's not labeled correctly, because they'll set up how they want it within that software. And if it doesn't come in that way, it just messes things up as
They're
well.
just not going to get seen.
No, they're
That's
not.
part of it,
They
right?
are.
No, they're
If it's
not.
not labeled correctly, you're not going to get seen or heard.
Right.
And
And one of the
that's
biggest
important.
jokes-
I mean, you want your audition to be seen and heard.
Yeah, and one of the biggest jokes behind closed doors at
See,
our
for me-
studio is that, we'll say, oh, they don't read. They didn't read. They don't read. They didn't read. They don't read. And of course they read. Of course they can read. But they're not
Wait,
taking the
what's
time
that,
to
Law?
read.
What don't they do?
That they don't read.
Did they read?
They don't read.
They don't read.
They don't read. How many, this is like an
that
acting. This is
because-
like a
is
Meisner
that because
exercise.
you think-
They don't read.
Well, here's the thing. So, so as a talent, right? I'll play devil's advocate here. So, how much time should I take to do that? Because everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, I have to get my audition in on time." And so maybe I guess that means they don't read, or they misinterpret it because they're just trying to get into the studio and get the audition done so quickly and get it to you. Like what's a good rule of thumb in terms of
I
how
have a
much should
good
they
answer
take
for
the
that.
audition?
I have a really good answer for that. The answer is this. The tightest of turnaround, I mean, I'm not talking about a pay to play because pay to plays are incredibly fast. I mean, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking from an agent's world. From an agent's world, the tightest turnaround is going to be in the same day. Okay, meaning it's due in 3 hours, 4 hours. That for us is a really tight casting rush turnaround, whatever. If you can't figure out how to read the specs, how to read in between the lines, create your role, do your recording, and get it in, not on time, but very early, then you're not trained. You're not a trained actor because it's not really about time. It's about your training. Because people who are trained in the industry, they are trained to move fast and expedite and execute and move on to the next thing. The people who are lingering and they're not sure and they're procrastinating and they can't get it in, unless they're at a gig, which of course we understand if they are at a gig, it's just lack of training and lack of discipline. So I think it's much more about what's your prep leading up to the audition process versus can I read? Most of the folks we deal with can read. They're readers. But here's the other thing I want to say, and then I'll hand it over to Carol. Many are not reading on a regular basis, Annie, because they're listening to things. So instead of reading the book, they're listening to the audiobook. They're listening to the podcast. They're listening. It's an easier thing for them to do while they're jogging and cleaning the house and doing whatever. So their eyes are not skilled on a tracking basis to read very carefully and closely fast. And I think that's why all VO talent should be taking cold reading actor classes where you have a script in your hand and you're made to bring that role up within 5 minutes, 10 minutes time, make quick and dirty choices so that your eyes, like physiologically, learn how to track with words and lines exactly. And I'm just talking about the direction.
And you know how to create the character and you know how to tell the story and read between the lines, understand the subtext and all of that from a script. And you know what? I would actually agree with you, Law. I feel as though the majority of voice talent don't necessarily put in the time on a day-to-day basis of, unless you're auditioning, you know what I mean, for hours, a day. I feel like the majority of talent, the ones that are looking to get into the business, they don't practice enough. They don't read enough scripts. They just think it's going to happen by osmosis, and then they get you get an audition once or twice a week maybe, and they think that's going to be enough for them to develop the skills that are necessary to do a quick, assessment of the script, figure out who your character is, understand the subtext and tell that story and submit an audition with the correct specs, with the correct file naming and get it in on time. And I don't think they do that enough.
I agree, if I can just jump in. And I was just going to say with tracking, I know if you should read every day with that, practice reading ahead, because the only time sometimes it takes and also have a routine of how you approach that script, meaning that, okay, are you going to first look to see when is it due? Okay, I can do this. It's due tomorrow morning. That doesn't mean you wait. if you don't have to wait, then you do it right then and there. Make all your decisions. Read what it is. Do you want to read the slating first? Do you want to read what it's about first? That's up to you. But I think for me, having a way in which I approach that script is very helpful. How many takes do they want? If they want two, we were talking about this before, that, okay, that may take a little bit more because you have to make decisions really to make that sound different. I know casting directors on different things I've listened to, they said the most annoying thing is someone saying, all right, I did 2 takes. Yeah, I changed a couple words, or I changed the speed. But that's kind of not, it's the,
that's not the point.
Than that. That's not
No.
the point.
No.
But having said that, you also don't want to spend a really long time, because as Lau even had told me a while back, it gets stuck in your head. And then no matter what, you can't change the
That's
direction.
right.
So let's
that you're
talk
going
about
into.
what's a really long time. Let's say you
Well,
have a commercial audition, right? How long do you think it should take on average?
Well, what's really interesting? There's an irony here too, Annie. The irony is a lot of times we would say, well, the people who come in first, who turn it around first, they're just rushing it through. They're moving on to something else. They're the rush crowd. From our perspective, it's absolutely false.
Right.
They are the best ones, the best ones we get. And again, I have to qualify it by saying I'm not talking about a pay to play. I'm talking about to your representative, to your agency. They're the best ones because they have trained themselves to work through the process, do the due diligence, and do it really fast within the time frame you need it. So without fail, the first 10, 15 people are always going to be our strongest people. It doesn't mean they'll be booked. It just means we know those people coming in are very strong. And they're fast. They're like 5 minutes fast. I'm not saying, I don't want the audience to freak out and go, she's saying 5 minutes. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying they're editing. They're recording, they're auditioning, they're writing, they're producing, they're on a momentum of energy and professionalism that tells them instinctively, like I always call myself the mama of time, because I'm a really good time checker. I'm a good monitor for an event because I keep people on time. And artists and creatives, no matter what level they're at, are typically really bad at time, really bad at time. So keeping that internal time is so important so that you know what is a minute, what is 30 seconds, what does 5 minutes feel like, and what should be happening in that, not waste time.
What is a part-time voice actor to do with that, right? If they get an audition and they're working and they can't get it to you within the first, you know what I mean? Is that something that should deter them from getting into the industry?
No, Carol knows. She deals with several agencies, including ours, and the average deadline is a day or 2 later, sometimes 3 days later.
But
so to us, that's a long time.
You're saying the people that get the audition in it within the first 5 to 10 minutes of you posting it are usually your strongest. Is that correct?
Yeah, but at the same token, for every audition, for every client that says we only want 6 people, Lau, we only want 8 people, we have tons of auditions that come through that do not have that direction. So they'll just take whatever we submit to them and they'll listen to whatever they want to listen to and they'll make their decisions. So that's not the majority of auditions that we're dealing with that need to be turned around within 2 hours or 3 hours. Most of our auditions, you have plenty of time to do it. And we typically will submit everyone that we send it to as long as we don't hear technical issues or as long as there aren't faux pas and mistakes or as long
you'll
as...
submit them to the client? So if there's
we'll submit
20,
them to the
submit
client.
20 to the client?
We'll submit 20 as long as they fit the criteria. But if they're too young, too old, if they're not...
50? I guess it depends on the client, right? I mean,
typically not because, typically they'll stop us.
Okay.
They'll stop us at a certain point. And sometimes we'll submit 20 or 30 and they'll say, yeah, no, we haven't. And then we'll get another 10 or 20 in. So that we want to have that backup, that plan B ready to go at all times.
Yeah.
So that they'll choose our agency. A lot of them are dealing with other agencies, right? So, yeah.
Well, all right. So, I'm sorry, Carol. Go on.
I'm sorry. I was just going to step back one thing because I was talking about having the routine. I also want to make mention if you do any kind of technical or medical, and Anne is the queen of medical, that you that may take. So if you set in your a time in your head, say, okay, I'm going to do this in 10 minutes or whatever, you have
An audition, right?
An audition,
Yep.
yes. So number one, is it only one take or is it two takes? Because that itself will dictate the time. But I also want to say, as you know, many times with medical auditions, you have to
Takes
look up
time.
you have to look up the pronunciation. Also, lately I've been getting little YouTube clips. They'll say, this is the sense of what we want. And you know how they always say, the specs and sound like this, sound like that. But if they're going to put a YouTube clip in there, my theory is that, well, they're kind of telling you
You should listen to it.
You should listen to it.
Yeah.
But the medical thing,
that would be an instruction. That would be an instruction.
Exactly.
That says, kind of like under the the subtext there is you better listen to it if they give you a reference, right?
Right. Well, that's my thought. I mean, that's the way I approach it.
I always say early is on time is late, and late is fired or not submitted. So early is always best in general, because what if they like you, but they need to send you some directions to do some retakes? That happens all the time on camera, where a director loves you, but you didn't quite deliver exactly what they're looking for. So they want to have time for you to do a retake or whatever. And there's plenty of time.
That's not a retake of the audition. That's assuming you got the gig. And so, right? I'm
No.
assuming. Oh,
No.
okay.
No.
So then they'll want another take of the audition. How often does that happen?
Not
Not
as
that
often.
often, but it can happen.
Yeah.
It happens more on camera, I think, than voiceover.
right,
But
right.
it has happened for us in voiceover a couple times, I'd say, in the history of MCVO, where they came back and they said, we really like this talent, but can we hear them do another read because we're really looking for this? And then they do it, right?
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of time.
Can I jump over to on camera, because I think there is a lot of relevance to voiceover as well, and even more so because they can be pickier. Because there you're also looking is that where the light is. Did you there's so many things. You're the director, you're the technical person on a self tape, and so you're really there's one casting director when it comes to casting networks that literally shows you pictures of what they want, which I consider as a gift. Because then it's like, okay, that's what they want. That's how I can do it. But I think it's also really good. Like if there's anybody out there that's also doing on camera or thinking about it, there are so many commonalities here. I think it's not easier, but it's very different as far as the voiceover with the on camera. The dates and the slating and the labeling is important and the same. But if you can do it for on camera, you can do it for voiceover, because there you're like, okay, I need picture number 1 first, 2. You really have to submit it correctly or you're going to go into the trash can and you've just spent an hour and a half on it.
Yeah.
So if you've done it with voiceover, the fact that they're telling you, I want, I don't know, role, name, agency, that's a gift. You don't have to think. You don't have to decide, I wonder what I should put on this.
I have a pet peeve to share. Carol has the same pet peeve. I know her. The pet peeve is this. When talent writes in, but Lau, you forgot to tell us this. You forgot to mention that. You didn't put this in there. And we keep saying to them over and over again, I say, sweetheart, listen to me. I'm not hijacking information from you. Everything that a client gives to us, we literally copy paste to you.
Yeah,
understand? Copy paste. We're not interpreting it. Like we're not interpreters. We're not translators. That's not what we do. We're the middlemen. We pass it on. So they get annoyed. And I can't blame them, because then they have to make an educated guess on it. They get annoyed if it doesn't say exactly, what is the take? What is the interpretation? What are they looking for here? Or when's the date on this? I say, you guys, we don't know. We're waiting on that information.
They're the actors, right? They're the actors. That's their job to, right?
That's the
Create
job.
that.
That's the job.
Yeah.
So I would say, could it be overlooked? Once in a while it could be, but most of the time it's not. Most of the time we send them exactly what we get from a client.
Well, okay, so that's talking about instruction for, let's say, auditions. What about instruction for, let's say, you get the job, right? And you're going through the paces of the job. You're either on a live directed session or you're communicating via email. And let's talk about the importance of following directions once you've got the job. Carol, I think you had something happen the other. You were telling me about where your script got changed.
Well, I hadn't even gotten it, which I guess is more common. I had always gotten that, but yes, I've had it where the script changes as well too. But it's not so different where you have to rethink. There could very well be people have had that. I haven't, but you just have to really focus and ask the questions there as well too. Well, the other little thing that I had too is just as we were about to start it, I was fortunate that the engineer's like 5 more minutes, and I was able to shut down the lawnmower next door. So there you go. You got to be ready for that as well.
Right.
Got to be ready for anything. Right. But and then one thing I always do too. I periodically check my Source Connect just to make sure that it's still working, especially since they went to 4 instead of 3.
Well, see, that's kind of in the subtext, right? So if you're going to be connecting with a live directed session, you want to make sure the subtext instructions are, make sure your Source Connect is working and that you can, test it out with a colleague for sure.
I always do that.
And sometimes, you're not having Source Connect sessions every day. There's things that could happen. There's computer updates. There's, Source Connect updates. And so you want to make sure that you're prepared, because that will tell your client that you're not prepared. You're not following instructions if you're not ready for that live directed session when it happens. And when it does happen, there is the tiny little fact of they're going to be directing you. And so that also is following directions. And so let's talk a little bit about that and how talent can navigate following directions during a live directed session and not cause chaos. Because sometimes that can happen too, I'm quite sure.
Yes. Yeah. Recently happened at our agency, unfortunately. But I wanted to make mention that in regards to having to know exactly what is happening or what is about to happen is a little bit of an idiosyncrasy of many of the talent that are working today, meaning that dealing with nuances, dealing with the unknown, dealing with having to create yourself is very worrisome to a lot of talent, I notice, especially in the audition mode. They'll come back to me and they'll say, oh, but it doesn't say this. Do you think it's okay if I do this? Should I try this? What do you think about this? Now, I don't mind that. I'm okay to answer the question. But I think to myself, again, where's your coach? Where's your colleague? Where's your people in the booth directing you? That's really not my job to answer that question. I can go and dig a little deeper and see if there's any more information. But again, I've given you everything that I know. So I can't really create the end user experience of what it should be because I don't really know myself. That's where the artistry comes in. I think the creative needs to take calculated risks all the time and just go with it and see what happens. I actually have talent that text me. That's a little bit of a faux pas, by the way. Talent who text me on interpretation of auditions. And I'll answer them because I know them, I'm friendly with them, I'm close to them, whatever. But I think to myself,
I was going to say,
just do it.
That's not a good thing for the most part.
It's not a good thing. It's like you're texting me on a Saturday to ask.
You don't want all your talent texting you. Exactly.
Well, you're texting me on a Saturday to ask me if you should do this interpretation. I'm like, oh, just try it. Just do it. I don't know. If I give a confident answer, yes, that's great. They somehow feel like they have been remedied when really I'm just taking an educated guess. I don't know. How do I know? I know what they've told me, and that's all I know. I don't know anything more. And by the way, they could change their mind and their whole interpretation.
You're not in their head. Yeah.
I'm not in their head.
I don't want to get too far. Well, first of all, I don't want to get too far off the topic of instruction, right? But I do.
But that is interesting,
you're
Annie.
The exception to the rule, Law. You're the exception to the rule. I would not advise talent at all to text their agent at all.
No, but that goes. Let's tie that back into the. Tie that back into the directions, though, and the reading of directions, and there's an interpretation process that you go through as an artist to say, okay, I've read it. If there's anything I don't understand, it's my due diligence to find out.
Text my agent.
Well, it's my due diligence to find out what everything means. And if I don't really know, I have to kind of create it because no one is holding back information from you. They want you to do the best job they can. Sure. Think about this. If they book you early and fast, it makes their lives easy. right? They don't want to hold out information on you. They want to give you the information you need to do a great job and book you. Right? If
I can
yeah.
just say one thing. I was just going to say, though, on the lines of that, I think sometimes these are my thoughts that sometimes they're looking to see what you come up with, especially if there are two takes.
Yeah.
You know, they're looking to see how creative you are and what you'd bring to the audition. I was always told that a lot, you know, during, you know, coaching and classes and stuff that, you know, they'll say they want X, you know, and then you bring them Y and they're kind of like, "Ooh, I never thought of that." We're not in their heads.
Well, I'll tell you that writing, the symbolic black and white of seeing something on a page and the comprehension of understanding what you're reading is not the interpretation process. A lot of talent stop there. They said, well, I read it and I'm doing it. I said, no, you have to interpret it. It's a story. A story is interpreted. It's not just the comprehension of reading the language and the words. And I think that's what you were saying, Annie, earlier, is that they need to go further in their training and in their education about how they deliver and how they shift in variety and how they really internalize the story of it versus just, am I understanding the words? Am I delivering it in a certain amount of time? Am I pleasing the client? But really, what is the story? And we haven't even spoken about the reading of it in regards to the target market. The reason they want that age range is because that's their target market.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
want,
that's their demographic. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, during a live directed session, let's talk about instruction during live directed session, right? Because I want to talk about how talent, can they follow instruction? Now, let's say somebody's directing a talent and they want it to be a certain way, but they're not necessarily sure how to direct that. How would you recommend talent handle that? In terms of they're getting direction that they either are not clear on, they're not understanding it, or they believe that they're giving what the client is asking for, and they're following directions and following instruction, but what happens when there's a mismatch there?
Well, I'll give my tip. I'll pass it to Carol. She'll have tips too. My tip is this: to actively and acutely listen. You have to silence not just your vocal cords, but silence your brain and focus. So if you do a really good meditative, focus zoned warm up, you're in a good place right there. I like to repeat back directions that are given to me, not like a parrot, not like a machine, but like a real person. Like, this is what you want me to do. I'm hearing you say this. Is that right? Right? Or I have a little bit of a question about it. Sure. What is it? Okay. And not being shy or worried about how you're perceived, but really just communicating as a person. That's why they hired you. They like your personality.
Communicate.
So I would actively listen and repeat it back and communicate authentically. What do you think, Carol?
Yeah, well, since I've been coaching with you for so long, of course, that's how I go about it too. But I've done it that way too. Like, they'll say, okay, I want 3 different takes. Just go through, and I want them very different. Perfect. You know, there's no question with that. But I agree. If I'm not quite sure, I'll just briefly say, okay, this is what you want. And I agree. And I've never really had any feedback that they said, well, why does she keep asking that question? But I think they just don't want, like, well, I don't know if I could quite do that. There's none of that where what you can or can't do. You just say, okay, great. And you do it.
Well, have you ever been redirected?
Yeah.
Well, now, can you give it to me, with a little more smile? Or can you make it a little more friendly? And then it hasn't been delivered to their standards?
They'll say, I've had it one time where they're like, well, can you just try it this way or a little more? Yes. I mean, they wanted more of a smile or, because a smile, how happy do you want it?
But have you ever gotten into, my question is, have you ever gotten into the position where you've thought you've given it to them, but yet they're asking, well, no, if you could do, that's happened to me.
Annie.
And then it's like, I'm not following directions.
Right.
Right. And I did have that once, and I thought, okay, so do you want it happy, or they do, I don't remember what the thing was, but yes, I do remember saying that. Maybe I didn't interpret it as that. I just thought maybe they changed their mind.
I'll tell you though, can I speak to that though? Because that's, I think, the actor's nightmare for every VO talent out there. It's like, what if I can't give them?
That's why I'm driving this.
I love it. But
you lose and you lose confidence. You're losing the confidence.
Yeah, but ask yourself the question, and I'm sure it does happen every once in a while, but the logical question is, when they hired me, I was doing what they wanted when they hired me. Otherwise, they wouldn't have hired me. So that's half the battle right there. I have seen this several times, Annie, where people have been dismissed out of the studio to be replaced. But it wasn't because they weren't giving them what they wanted. It was because of their attitude, their behavior, their personality, their losing of their patience and becoming miffed, all of that stuff that couldn't get them to the next place, that they were meaning the talent was aggravated. And they said, you can't do this, and they were replaced.
Yeah.
But if they had kept their temper, so to speak, would they have been able to reach it? Probably they would have, probably. But I think a lot of talent expect it to just happen and happen very fast.
Right. Right. And that's the thing when they're asking for different direction. And here's the thing. You could audition for something and get the gig based on an audition. And then all of a sudden somebody else comes into the booth, a different client, the owner comes in or another department comes in and it's not what they want at all. And then they shift the direction. Right. And if you end up getting frustrated or angry or freaked out so that you can't communicate properly, and you cannot work with them after that, right? It's never their fault. You don't ever want to lay blame on anything. And so you just need to deliver what they're asking. And so if you cannot accomplish that in a professional manner, right? Then I think, Lau, that's what you're talking about. When the talent will get dismissed, they're not giving them what they need, or they're going to get another talent on it. So I think mentally, actors when they're being live directed, and you need to I love Lau, you need to actively listen first. Yeah. And I love the repeat back, because I think that's going to help with the communication so that you can get to what they're looking for. And you just have to keep in mind that they hired you, you're doing a job, and so if they ask you for 100 different takes, that's what you should deliver. As long as it's within the contractual agreement.
And I also think by what we were talking about is asking the questions though too, and I think it shows that they're like, okay, good, now she understands that. If I can just say one thing though, that had actually happened more so on an on-camera one that I was doing. He had changed his mind a lot. I was delivering it one way. He goes, yeah, no, I think I want it this way. And we were probably there for quite a while doing it. And I'm like, okay. And I would do that. He goes, no, pull the hand. It was a very specific thing. It was a commercial. And I was like, okay, is this better with this? He was, English was not his first language either. But, and we did it. We made it through. It was just because I was like, okay, you just have to go with it. And Ann, you're absolutely right. As long as you're not, getting like,
and that's why, and what you said earlier a while back at the beginning of our program was just a full circle to this right now, which is the training, the background, like all those classes you've taken in acting and improv and vocal delivery and working with directors and cold reads and natural reads, all that stuff. That's for that moment. Yeah. That's for that moment.
It culminates in that moment of a live directed session.
Exactly. It's like, have you ever heard the customer is always right? It is still kind of true, because we're being paid, or we're having that moment to shine because we're providing a service and a value that they want, they're excited about,
and
but it's not for us. How lucky are we? How lucky are we?
And think about it. I think we're luckier if we're live directed, personally, because you can just, give them what they're looking for, versus I have to fight with myself in the booth saying, do I think this is what they're looking for? Yeah. Or, you fight your own battles. But I think being live directed is a gift. And if you, you should really, I think, go into the booth thinking of it in that way and think of, yes, I'm providing a service. service. I will do whatever it takes to deliver that service to them in an agreeable and professional manner. And if not, then I risk being replaced.
And you know what? If you put it in any other context, you can't follow instruction. Yep. If you put it in any other context, it totally makes sense. When I go to a doctor, when I go and get served in a restaurant, when I go to customer service at the airport. If that person, that professional is being paid a salary to service me, right, or I'm paying them basically, right, and they lose their temper very quickly, I don't want to deal with them. Like, I'm going to go to another server. I'm going to go to another doctor. I'm going to go to... So I'm like, who are you to get annoyed with me because I forgot it was here in the shoulder and not here in the shoulder? Like, who are you, right? So it's the same premise. It's like we're being paid for service, and we need to listen to what that client is really...
Listen to the instructions.
Exactly.
Listen and be patient. Like, develop patience is a virtue.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you've had that training, like I did 20 years in airline customer service. So let's just say I had seen it all.
Let's bring that corporate world right into your voiceover, because it does a lot, right? It's very helpful.
Exactly.
It is.
Exactly like that. And I used to tell
very helpful.
I used to do new hire training though too. And I said, look, I said, just keep it calm and just say, if you don't know something, people just think if they don't know something, that's when people get mad. I said, no. If you say, look, I'm new, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my supervisor to help me with this. 9 times out of 10, they're going to go, oh, good. I don't have to. They'll trust you.
Yeah, of course.
And I want you to. I think one last note, because we need to wrap this up. I would say that if you are delivering that service within reason of the contract, I'm going to say, if you're going to, if they all of a sudden want an additional word or saying that additional word differently, it's a slippery slope when you want to maybe challenge the fact that, well, it's not in my contract, or if you want to challenge that, it is something that I think you have to handle very tactfully, and understand that if they're asking you for multiple takes and you think that maybe they're going to be using it for other, other drops, that is something absolutely to work out with your agent, and they are the ones who understand and did all the work with the contract. So if you have any doubts about what you're being asked to do during the session, then it might be time to take a quick break. And this would be the time where I'd say, maybe if you have the phone number of your agent, or you could text them and say, hey, look, they're asking me to do, another script. Or is this within the scope? And that's where I think that would be. But I wouldn't challenge it immediately. No. I would, handle it in a professional manner and just not. I don't want to deal with people who nitpick with me. And so I assume that they don't want to deal with me if I'm nitpicking with them. Really.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and don't worry. And I said, don't ever forget the word thank you, because sometimes when they're giving me direction, I'm like, oh, great, thank you very much. Yeah. You don't say it every other word, but
Yeah, I wanted to say too. Final thought. Final thought of the day for me is that take some business courses.
Yeah.
I feel like every talent should have an MBA. And the reason why I say that is because you have the theory, you have the academia, you have the training and demo. Now, real world experience is oppositional to that. So I think you have to see the difference between your training, your learning, your coaching, your academics. And real world. And it is a slippery slope. Like, we want to keep to our contracts. We want to keep to what we agreed to. But I'm telling you, there is something to the saying, may I earn your business. I'm earning business because I'm doing all sorts of things. I'm doing you favors. I'm giving you introductions. If I charged for every single thing I did for someone, I would be in Morocco as a billionaire right now. I would be because
if you got it.
Well, no, I mean, like, behind the scenes, people have no idea what creates success is about relationships, and it's not just about the written word on the page. It's about what we do for each other. And I'm not advocating you should do a whole bunch of extra work and not get paid, but I am saying this. If I'm going to do an extra tag, or I'm going to do an extra line, or I'm going to give you an extra half an hour, guess what? It's worth it, because you're going to call me back for all those gigs for the next 10 years, and we're going to have a great relationship together. So you have to weigh out your battles versus winning the war, so to speak, when it comes to what I'm reading versus what I'm experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say just trust your agent too. I mean, one of the on-camera things I did, she says, well, they're not going to do the check yet because something changed and whatever. And I'm like, okay. And guess what? It worked out. I mean, that's just the way I am. I feel like that's what they do.
Yeah. Well, guys, I got to wrap this up.
Gosh, we could go on forever.
All day. Yeah, this is like a double episode. But guys, so in reality, yes, following instructions is so important for us as voice actors, and I think that we just need to remind ourselves that, again, we are a part of a cog in the cog in the wheel of a campaign and a production, and so we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to make it effortless and cooperative and follow instructions. Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
This has been an amazing conversation. I'm going to give a great big shout out to our sponsor, IPDTL. You too can network like bosses and find out more at ipdtl.com. Guys, have an amazing week. Follow those instructions. So I'm telling you to have an amazing week. You better follow those instructions.
Gotcha.
And we will see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Bye.